Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's session. My name's Andy Saltmer. I'm a solutions consultant here at Acuity, and what I'm going to be doing today is walking us through the Salesforce integration with Sage Intacct. So the session and the content that has been designed for today assumes that you've got a base level understanding of Sage Intacct or Salesforce, or more generally CRM. As this isn't a specific demonstration of both solutions, we're just going to be covering off the integration part. So what I've actually got here is a slide that's just showing us on the left hand side Salesforce and some of the objects or tables within that system, and on the right hand side we're looking at Sage Intacct and the tables or objects within that system. And what these are actually showing are the standard touch points, the integration touch points between the two systems. So if I start at the top on the left hand side, I've got accounts in Salesforce. These can be synchronized and have customers created automatically within Sage Intacct. Price books can become price lists, products can become items, projects and contracts, depending on the nature of your business, can also be integrated and synchronized between the two systems. Sales opportunities within Salesforce can become sales orders or sales invoices for that matter. And then we can also link payments back from the finance system into Salesforce. You might notice the arrows that are on this screen here. These are showing whether data is pushed from one system to the other, or whether in some instances, or in most of those instances, whether it can be a bi-directional sync. So I could create a price book within Salesforce, update that price list within Sage Intacct, and have that information pushed back across to Salesforce, so meaning bi-directional. And finally, just before we get into the product kind of side of it and the demonstration of the actual integration piece, why might you choose an integrated solution? Well, there are a number of reasons that you might do this. I've picked a few there, and I'll just read down these quickly. You might want to have an integrated solution because it can save time and reduce errors. You can increase sales and finance productivity, specifically in this example, given we're talking about CRM systems and finance systems. We can streamline the quote to cash process by integrating and having these modules work together. And we can save time without having to rekey data, and we'll see some examples of that in a few moments. And we can give greater visibility across the business. So really what's meant by that is we can have our sales team operating within Salesforce, we can have our finance team operating within Sage Intacct, and because of these bi-directional syncs and passing of data between the two systems, what it allows is for non-finance users to be able to actually see what's going on in other areas of the business, and we'll have a look at that as well. And finally, increased collaboration across different departments and or entities. Well, this is really about the chatter function within Salesforce, and that allows us to at people, so we can tag people against different transactions and things like that, and we'll have a look at that as well. So without further ado, let's head across and have a look at the products. So if we just pop out of here and go to my web browsers, what I've actually got here, just to give everyone a bit of information, is I have Sage Intacct open on this tab, and you can recognise that by the Acuity logo here. And actually I have Salesforce on another tab here, and forgive that it says Sage Intacct there. The reason it says that is the view that I'm using. There's an Intacct view that you can use, which just reorganises all of these tabs across the top to make them a bit more relevant for what we're talking about today. So I'm using that, but this is in fact Salesforce. So if we talk about some of the touch points that we have between the two systems, what we can actually do is, if I start with contacts, Salesforce has a concept of a contact record within the system. So these are people, which can then be added to accounts, and Sage Intacct is very similar in that respect. So the underlying record within Sage Intacct is a contact record, and those contact records can then be used for many different things. So they can be added to customers and suppliers and employees and other types of record as well. But if I wanted to go and create a contact record within Salesforce, and if I just very quickly go and do this and create one here, what I can actually do is synchronize this across to Intacct. And you'll notice here you'll have some fields that say things like Intacct Contact ID and Intacct Entity. If I just click on this one here, you'll see this drop down list of the different entities that I have set up within Intacct. And this is reading this directly from Sage Intacct to look up what these entities are. If I go and pick one of these, and just pick this one for example, I'm not going to populate this record in its entirety, but I can then have options about how I choose to synchronize this. So I can do this immediately when I create it, or I could do it after the event. So where you would really do this after the event is possibly with the account record. So you might have thousands of different account records within your CRM system, but not all of those account records will become customers. So why would you flood your finance system with information you're never going to do anything with? But if I just go ahead actually and just save this, what actually happens is it tells me that it's created this contact, and I can see some information about this here. So if I just pop across into Sage Intacct, what I will be able to do here is to actually start to search for that contact. So if I come into here, go into my list of contacts and type in the word demo, what you'll see here is the contact that we just created. Okay, so very similarly, this can also apply to accounts as well. So if I come into here, and you'll see a list of accounts that I've got set up within within Salesforce. Again, if I come into here, I want to create a new account, and again, I'll just do this very, very quickly. Come into here, fill in some of the default information, choose whether I want to synchronize this with Intacct. I can choose some information here. Again, I'm going to pick one of the Intacct entities. I'm going to go and pick a contact, so you can see there's the contact that we just created, and I'll pick that again there. I can go and grab the default payment terms from Sage Intacct and have them listed out in here, picking at 30 in this example there. And I can fill in some other information as well. But again, if I want to go and synchronize this, I can do this at source, or when I create it, or I can do this after the event. And again, if I just do this very, very quickly and just go and create this, it tells me that this account was created as a customer within Sage Intacct. And actually, just before I go across to Intacct, if I just refresh this screen, I'll know that this is being created as an Intacct customer, because down here on the right hand side, what I can actually do is see the customer ID. So if I just go and copy this and then come in across into Sage Intacct, go to my list of customers. In fact, I'll just do it from the entity level. And again, come into my list of customers, as I was just saying. What I will be able to do is search for that account number, and again, I can see the account that's been created there. Okay. So already what we're actually seeing here is how we can save time by not having to rekey that information from Salesforce into Sage Intacct, and it also saves on potentially user error by keying things incorrectly and other things as well. Before I get into the more kind of maybe interesting part of this around the transactions, what I wanted to do just very quickly is just pop back to here and have a look at the setup. So what comes along with this module is a whole setup and configuration page. So if I just come into here very quickly, you'll see things like the synchronization options here, and you'll see accounts, and you can see contacts and products and opportunities, price lists, and other things as well. And each of these components, so accounts in this instance, can have its own set of rules applied to it. But also what we can do is have this field mapping section here. So this will show us the Intacct field, the linked Salesforce field, and the synchronization rule. In this instance, it's set to Intacct. But just by the very nature of Salesforce and CRM in general, each one of those solutions can be very, very highly configured and tailored to suit the need of whoever's operating them, whichever business is operating them. And because this isn't a kind of rigid integration, what you're able to do within here is start to create custom mappings yourself. So we're not just restricted to this set of fields that are available for the account object. So what I mean by that is I have a list of standard integrated fields here, but actually if I wanted to treat some of those differently, I could do so and through this custom mapping bit here. So for example, I can take my email address and have it, instead of it just updating from Salesforce, if that email address is updated within Sage Intacct, we can have that pushed back bidirectionally into Salesforce. And I've done that for a couple of other things as well, for a couple of other standard fields rather. But we also have this ability here to include custom fields as well. So this is not a custom field within Intacct. This is not a standard field within Intacct. It's not a standard field within Salesforce. These are two fields that I created within the system. So what we can do is start to really pad this out, not only with the standard fields that are available, but also with other ones as well. So with that being said, let's just pop out of here, and actually if we just pop across back to Salesforce, if we start to have a look at more transactional based things within the system, I can have a list of opportunities that you can see here, and I said I wasn't going to get into this in too much detail, but an opportunity is basically something that's pre-sale, so we can manage a pipeline of opportunity of things that we think we might sell within our CRM system. If I go and create a new opportunity, you can see that I have two different options here. So I have a contract workflow and an order entry workflow. Order entry may be for everyone on the call, whereas contract is a little bit more niche, and we'll maybe cover that off a little bit later. But if I go and pick my order entry workflow, I can come into here and say this is going to be for, I don't know, £1,200 or something like that. We'll call it new op, and we'll say it's at a status of qualified. From here I can go and pick an account, so there's the one we've just been created. I'm actually going to pick a different one for the purposes of this, and I'm going to say it's going to close on the 14th of January. Again, I can choose to synchronize with Intacct at this point in time if I wanted to, and I can also go and pick some additional information. So if I'm in an environment where I have multiple entities, I pick which entity that this belongs to, who do I want to bill it to, and I'm just going to pick this person because they're associated to this account. I'll pick some default terms as we did a bit earlier for this particular transaction. I'm not going to do anything with the project stuff at this moment in time, but if I was running projects within Sage Intacct, I could also have that synchronized and operational from a Salesforce perspective as well. Where do we want to supply our goods from? What department does that relate to? And I'm just going to go and pick one. I'll pick services, and I'll just pick a start and end date. And say, excuse me. Helps if you put in the right date format, and we'll just do that as well. Just make sure I've gone. The final thing I didn't do actually here was pick which type of transaction I want to go and create. So off the back of this particular transaction, actually what I want to go and do when I go and convert this is have it create a sales order. I could just have easily gone and selected invoice or a memo or any of the other ones as well. And then that transaction type would be created within Intacct. I'm just going to go ahead and save that. That saves our opportunity header. This is in Salesforce terms, the pipeline. So these are the different stages that I can, or the life cycle of an opportunity, and I can move throughout that as we go towards the end, and hopefully we'll close win that. But before I do that, actually what I can do here is go and add some products or services to our opportunity. I can pick a price book. Again, the price book can be either driven from Salesforce or it can be driven from Intacct. The choice is yours there. If I come into here and just pick the standard price book, And then all I have to do is see which products are within here, and I'll just, for the purposes of this, pick some cables, for example, hit select, and then I can enter some details about that particular product. So we want 10 of those, the sales price is £2 per unit. I can add in a custom description if I wanted to, and a few other things as well. And once I'm happy with that, I can save that away. Naturally, if I wanted to add more products or services to this opportunity, I could. And then what happens from this moment on is you would typically work within Salesforce. And what happens is you get to the end of that particular opportunity, and hopefully we've won that, and then there's a deal and there's an order in this example that needs to come through. So we can mark that stage as close won. And once we've done that, we can then choose what we want to do. In this instance, we're going to create a sales order. What this is doing is opening up a secure connection with Sage Intacct. And what actually happens here is it drags all of the information from the opportunity, so the products and the pricing and everything else, into a form where we can review that information. I'll just go and pick a currency here. I can review that information if I wanted to, so you can see I've got my product, there's cables there, and it's using the product ID within Intacct. You can see there's a quantity there, there's the price there, and everything else that we filled in as well. Naturally, I could change this if I wanted to, but once I'm happy with that, I can just go and post that within the system. And what that actually does, and once I'm happy with that, all I have to do is then go and post this to the finance system. So what this should do, and you can see this is actually working on that at the second, is it goes away and it goes and creates that sales order. So again, if we come back into Sage Intacct and go and have a look at our list of sales orders, what you'll be able to see in here is a sales order that we've just created. It's got a reference of new op, which is what we put on the opportunity in Salesforce. You can see it's for this particular customer, and everything else has come through into the system as well. So if I just ignore a few business processes for the purposes of this today, what would actually happen at some point is this this particular sales order might be dispatched. It might be then an invoice might be created for that. So if I just go ahead and create an invoice off the back of this order, and the reason I'm going to do this is to show the synchronization back into Salesforce in a few moments' time. So I've chosen to convert that sales order. Again, similar to what I've talked about already, everything from that sales order in terms of information has been dragged across to the sales invoice. So I can see here, again, it's the same customer, it's the same products, it's the same location, departments and quantities, pricing, that kind of stuff. Naturally, if I wanted to go and change this, I can. But actually what I wanted to do was use this post and pay option here at the top. So I'm going to go and post that invoice, and what I'm going to do is create a payment as well, and we're going to just say it's a record transfer, and it was for £20, and we'll call it SF Demo, and we're going to pick our NatWest bank account. I'm just going to hit pay on that. So what this actually does is if you can remember back to the slide at the beginning, it's gone and created that payment successfully within Sage Intacct. But also what it should have done is if I come back into here and have a look within Salesforce, if I go and refresh my opportunity, you'll start to see the information that was entered within in Sage Intacct and represented within Salesforce. So you can see here, this invoice that I created within Sage Intacct can now be seen within Salesforce. So we're getting that 365-degree view across the business. We'll no longer having people in sales asking finance whether invoices have been created. And as a sales user within Salesforce, if I go and click on that invoice, I can see a bit more detail about that. And actually the reason that I went and posted that payment is because we also have a payment summary as well. So I can see here that this particular invoice has also been paid. And I've done all of that without me having to go to finance or send emails or anything like that as well.
So from an introduction to some of the core features and functions there, that's all I was going to cover off for today. I did mention throughout the video and in certain areas that there was more niche integration capabilities around contracts, around projects and other things as well, which I'm not going to cover off on this particular video. If you do have requirements in those areas, we're more than happy to have further discussions where we can understand those requirements in more detail and set up tailored sessions for yourselves on just how that might work. But thank you for watching, thank you for your time, and do feel free to follow up with any questions. Thanks.